Colombia's Attorney General's office has requested a lifting of the house arrest warrant issued against former President Alvaro Uribe on the investigation for witness tampering and procedural fraud. Russia has reiterated the proposal to host a meeting between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan to seek a solution to the armed conflict in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The United Nations Security Council is set to consider a proposal by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to hold an international peace conference. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Colombia, where the Attorney General's office has requested the lifting of the house arrest warrant issued against former President Alvaro Uribe on August 4th, who's under investigation for witness tampering and procedural fraud. Representing the Attorney General's office, Colombian prosecutor Gabriel Jaimes submitted the request to the Judge of Guarantees No. 30, while arguing that the preventative measure had no legal validity due to a change to the judicial process from Law 600 to Law 906, as was previously noted by the Supreme Court. Former President Uribe is being investigated for over 200 open cases, including on charges of corruption, human rights violations, bribery, witness tampering and procedural fraud. Meanwhile, he is due to attend court on Friday to request the lifting of the house arrest ordered by the Preliminary Investigations Chamber. On Wednesday, Mexico's Senate approved a referendum requested by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to allow citizens to decide whether or not to prosecute 5 former presidents accused of acts of corruption. The referendum was approved with 65 votes in favour from senators of the National Regeneration Movement Party, or Morena, and its allies, while there were 49 votes against cast by opposition representatives of the National Action Party and the Institutional Revolutionary Party. Having been approved by the Supreme Court and the Senate, the referendum now needs to be approved by the lower house, where it's expected to pass because the ruling Morena party has a majority of seats. Morena Senator Martí Bartis stated that the referendum is a landmark move to end an era of abuse, corruption and repression. Protests continue for the 9th consecutive day in Costa Rica against the government's intention to reach an agreement with the International Monetary Fund. The National Rescue Movement announced it would maintain the roadblocks across the country this Thursday. Activists stress that the protests will continue until the government abandons its bid to secure a loan from the IMF. In this context, the National Executive has conditioned the beginning of talks on the end of the demonstrations. In response, mobilised sectors have called for a peaceful rally on Monday to condemn the government's economic policy. The President of the Dominican Republic, Luis Abinader, is set to address the nation to announce the 2021 National Budget Bill on Thursday. The President is expected to offer details of the Revenue Budget Bill and the Public Expenditure Bill, which were previously sent to the National Congress. This will be the second address by the President to the nation aimed at providing details on the bill, following criticism over the new taxes included. Meanwhile, several social organisations have reiterated their rejection of the bill, claiming it will establish new taxes that negatively affect the most vulnerable sectors of the country. The Cuban government is set to inform the population this Thursday of a series of domestic laws to be adopted. A programme will be broadcast on national radio and television to inform of the measures which were approved during a political bureau meeting of the Communist Party of Cuba, presided by First President Army General Raúl Castro. The agenda included analysis of several laws that will be submitted to the National Assembly of People's Power for approval during its next session scheduled for October 28th. Among these are the law of the President and the Vice President of the Republic, one governing the revocation of elected members of people's power bodies, the law establishing organisation and functioning of the provincial governments of people's power, as well as the law on the organisation and functioning of municipal administration councils. A proposal to update the plan to control COVID-19 was also presented, and details will be announced. And with its candidacy for a UN Human Rights Council seat, Cuba seeks to strengthen its cooperative approach to international affairs. Cuba's alternate permanent representative to the United Nations, Ana Silvia Rodriguez, posted a statement on her Twitter account this Thursday, including information on Cuba's achievements in gender equality, women's empowerment and the fight against discrimination, as well as the promotion and protection of the rights of children and adolescents and the right to health and medical cooperation, among other areas which support the country's bid for a Human Rights Council seat. In February 2020, Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez announced in Geneva the Caribbean country's candidacy to join the Council for the 2021 to 2023 period. During his speech at the high-level segment of the 43rd session of the Council, Rodriguez reiterated Cuba's support for the body, made up of 47 member states which are elected by the UN General Assembly. Russian authorities reiterated the proposal on hosting a meeting between the foreign ministers of Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan in order to seek a solution to the armed conflict in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. If agreed, the official talks would also include representatives from the Minsk Group and the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe.
We consider different scenarios of the conflict resolution in Nagorno-Karabakh. We have proposed to make Moscow a platform to organize a meeting between foreign ministers of Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, with the participation of the Minsk Group of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. We are holding consultations with parties regarding the possible time for them to start the negotiations.
And fighting between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region continued on Thursday, with increased shelling in the province's capital ahead of the first meeting of international mediators in Geneva. Defence officials in Azerbaijan and Armenia said fighting continued, with both sides claiming to have inflicted heavy losses and accusing the other of shelling civilian areas. As well as the new bombardments on the capital of the disputed region, Azerbaijan said Armenian shelling of several villages near the front line had left people dead and wounded. According to Armenian authorities, the renewed fighting has displaced around half of Karabakh's 140,000 residents and forced some 90% of its women and children from their homes. French authorities have pointed out that the coronavirus situation is deteriorating across the country, while urging to activate emergency measures to cope with the fast-rising numbers of COVID-19 patients in the Paris region.
First of all, an epidemiological overview. The sanitary situation keeps on deteriorating in France, unfortunately. It's also the case in many neighboring countries. Some areas in a more deteriorated sanitary situation than ours, and some other countries have been facing a resumption of the epidemic, unfortunately, for the past few days or weeks. For these four cities, Lille, Grenoble, Lyon and Saint-Étienne, a placement under maximum virus alert has been decided by the President of the Republic during a Defense and National Security Council. This placement will be effective from Saturday morning. It means that the number of COVID-19 patients in ICU in Parisian hospitals is increasing, and the sanitary pressure is getting heavier in the hospital of Paris and its region, imposing the Council some medical acts.
Authorities in Croatia have urged the population to adopt preventative measures in the face of the rising number of COVID-19 cases across the country. Health authorities recorded the highest ever daily increase in new cases on Thursday at 542.
Today we registered a record daily number of new cases since the start of the pandemic, 542. That is up by 179 cases compared to yesterday. When we put this in a broader global context, it should be noted that over 36 million people worldwide have been infected so far, and more than 1 million have died as the result of the coronavirus infection. I present all this so that we as a society will understand that this virus is a serious threat to our health and lives, a serious threat. Relativizing and underestimating the virus produces concrete consequences such as non-compliance with protective measures and irresponsible behavior which jeopardize public health and the economy. Let me stress, science needs time to find solutions, and we should give it that time. We should follow the guidance of our crisis response team rather than politically motivated guesses and unfounded unprovided advice.
The government of Spain has announced the creation of the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Plan, taking advantage of the rescue package provided by the European Union. The intention is to reactivate the economy with strong public investment. Our correspondent Adriana Cardosa brings us the details in the following report.
The government has announced an economic recovery plan focused especially on green investment and digital transition with the 140 billion euros that Spain will receive from the European Union. Half of it, 72 billion euros, will be invested between 2021 and 2023.
The executive will concentrate the efforts on resource mobilization, especially in the first 3 years, to accelerate the reactivation of our economy and the modernization of our country.
The government seems focused on avoiding the austerity policies of past crises. Therefore, this plan includes a strong public investment that generates economic growth.
We want to promote an additional growth on our gross domestic product of more than 2.5 percentage points over the next 3 years, and we want to create more than 800,000 jobs over the next 3 years.
The government has pointed out this time that Europe has lived up to what the crisis demands. The Union has allowed for the suspension of fiscal rules on the path to stability until 2022. For this reason, the Council of Ministers has approved a historic increase in the spending ceiling to 53%, although the government points out that economic policies must continue to be sensible and responsible.
It does not mean in any way that this government will abandon the principle of budget stability, and I'm going to be quite clear. The fiscal rules are suspended by the social responsibility of the government, and the whole of the public administration is not suspended.
It's a plan that pretends to show the unity of the government of coalition while coming out of the crisis guided by an increase in public expenditure. In order for the plan to go into effect, the government still needs the approval of the new general state budget, which will be discussed starting next week.
Adriana Cardoso y Edu Marín, TeleSUR, Madrid.
The world's leading medical journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, has published an editorial blasting the failures of the Trump administration on the novel coronavirus. The article, entitled "Dying in a Leadership Vacuum," calls on Americans to vote the current administration out in November. The editors note that the US has failed a crucial test of leadership during the pandemic, stressing that the magnitude of this failure is astonishing. They also criticise inconsistent and late lockdown measures, only imposed after the virus had spread in many communities. The New England Journal of Medicine is considered one of the most prestigious in the world and broke with a nearly 2-century tradition of avoiding politics to criticise US politicians for their handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
When we have a situation where masks work, social distancing works, quarantine and isolation work, and yet we have a president who is questioning and in some sense transferring facts, those are facts, into opinions, and then those opinions get, you're on either one side of the opinion or the other. This makes it very difficult to conduct healthcare. I mean, it's bad enough when people read things on the internet that are wrong and doctors have to spend time sort of addressing those issues. I think that's what's expected. But having that level of misinformation coming from the top, from the president and from all of his minions, I think that is a way more than most doctors can handle.
US President Donald Trump said Thursday that he will not participate in the second presidential debate with Joe Biden after the Commission on Presidential Debates said the event would be held virtually in the wake of the president's positive coronavirus diagnosis. In an interview, Trump told Fox Business that he was not going to waste his time on a virtual debate. Biden's campaign team swiftly agreed to the virtual format on Thursday, scheduled to be held on October 15th. But Trump's comments threw the debate into question after the Commission took a significant step to overhaul the normal format of the annual event. The move was seen as necessary by members of the debate commission, given the uncertainty around the president's health. Politically, if Trump skips the debate, he'll be deprived of a platform that some argue he needs, at a time when his campaign is trailing behind in every national poll and in a number of key swing states. The first event was watched by more than 73 million people, but was widely criticised for the lack of decorum and respect between the two candidates. The United Nations Security Council is set to consider a proposal by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to hold an international peace conference. According to Palestine's permanent observer to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, the UN Security Council will convene a public debate session in late October with the aim of analysing details related to the initiative. The Palestinian president has called for United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to convene an international conference early next year to launch a genuine peace process between Israel and Palestine, after having rejected the peace proposal unveiled in January by US President Donald Trump, in which illegal Jewish settlements in occupied Palestinian territories would be recognized as part of Israel. President Abbas urged Guterres to work with the Middle East Quartet of mediators, the United States, Russia, the European Union and the UN, and the UN Security Council on a conference with full authority and with the participation of all concerned parties. United Nations officials have expressed concern over the political situation in Kyrgyzstan, while urging the population to uphold the rule of law and continue to exercise restraint and refrain from violence.
The Special Representative for the Secretary General for Central Asia, Natalia German, has been following the situation very closely and is in touch with senior Kyrgyzstani officials to explore ways in which the United Nations can assist the country in finding a peaceful resolution to the current situation. The resident coordinator is also in touch with the authorities in Bishkek, and until a negotiated solution is reached, we urge Kyrgyzstanis to uphold the rule of law in the country and continue to exercise restraint and refrain from violence.
The rape and murder of a 19-year-old woman in Algeria has sparked an outcry for action on gender-based violence in the North African country, as well as calls to bring back the death penalty. The body of the young woman, identified as Chaima Sadou, was found in early October at a deserted petrol station 50 miles east of the capital, Algiers. According to local media, she had been beaten, raped and burned alive. The suspect, who has reportedly confessed, is being charged with rape and voluntary homicide with premeditation and ambush using torture. The man was an acquaintance of the family, against whom the young woman had previously pressed rape charges in 2016.
This government that offers no shelters or mechanisms to protect the victims from their torturers, this government that says it has laws, but in reality women are asked to forgive their aggressor, be it their brother or their father or whatever. Women file a complaint and wait 3 or 4 years for it to be resolved or for a judgment to be rendered. These are unacceptable conditions. Algeria is for Algerian men and women. A stop to the silence that kills, to the laws that kill, laws that protect rapists who can go out to kill. A stop to crime in general for Shaima and for the Shaimas around the world. I say a stop, let's mobilize, let's not let it happen again. Let this silence stop and let this society begin to understand that the problem is in the culture of violence.
Protests in many Indonesian cities turned violent on Thursday as thousands of students and workers criticised a new law they say will cripple labour rights and harm the environment. Clashes between rock-throwing demonstrators and riot police broke out near Jakarta's presidential palace as police tried to disperse the protesters, including workers and high school and university students. President Joko Widodo is visiting central Kalimantan province and was not at the palace at the time. Police fired tear gas at demonstrators as they tried to approach the palace compound, turning roads into a smoke-filled battleground. Addressed in the United Nations Security Council on Thursday, the permanent representative of Mali to the United Nations reaffirmed the commitment voiced by the transitional government to implement the agreement for peace and reconciliation in the country.
The organization of credible elections that can lead to a return to constitutional order depends on political, institutional, electoral and administrative reforms as set out in the Transitional Charter. In the prevailing context in Mali, it seems to me very important to reassure once again all of our partners that our national authorities remain determined to respect all the national and international commitments to which Mali has freely subscribed in accordance with the principle of continuity of the state. In this regard, I would like here and without any ambiguity to reiterate the determination of the authorities of the transitional to continue relentless the diligent implementation of the agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali.
On Thursday, Kuwait's new Crown Prince took his oath of office before Parliament after being nominated by his half-brother, the new Emir. Sheikh Mishal Al-Ahmed Al-Jabbar Al-Sabah, aged 80, was approved by the National Assembly. The new Crown Prince swore to defend the liberties, interests and properties of the people and to safeguard the country's independence and integrity. Sheikh Mishal has been Deputy Chief of the Kuwait National Guard since 2004, largely staying out of the political scene and away from the royal family. His appointment, rather than a selection of a next-generation candidate, is seen as a conservative choice that provides continuity. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but in honour of the heroic commander Ernesto Che Guevara on the anniversary of his assassination in Bolivia, we invite you to listen to one of the most famous songs dedicated to him, Hasta Siempre Comandante, by Cuban singer-songwriter Carlos Puebla. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website and social media pages. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching and enjoy the music.
Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Tu mano gloriosa y fuerte sobre la historia dispara cuando todo Santa Clara se despierta para verte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia